My name is Adam Bean and welcome to the 80th edition of Airhacks TV. 80th edition means you spent with me 80 hours in the last years, like 2 work weeks. Crazy. Okay, now let's start with the topics. Some interesting news or nice news first. Welcome again attendees from the 80th, Airhacks meetup. And what I recognize is that we have already now over 300 members or air hackers of the Airhacks group, which is amazing. It's like a small Java user group. And what I'm going to still or keeping doing here is announcing the Airhacks TV as well as conferences. So for instance, you could get free tickets to the JCon conference, and you got some coupon codes for the JDD conference. So JDD conference. So sometimes I'm asking the organizers, and I'm asking the organizers whether they can give me a free entry for the attendees. Okay, now also surprising is the popularity of the Airhacks FM podcast. And by the way, the recent episodes were interesting. So there was one about Vaadin and web components, cloud events, and particularly interesting is the GMS with Microsoft. So they implemented a GMS to all compatible Microsoft Azure service in the clouds. And why is it interesting? Because we also had a discussion GMS versus Quarkus versus Kafka at the end of the show, and there were lots of questions regarding my opinion again about Kafka and JMS, and we discussed that with Microsoft. So it was I enjoyed the conversation, and also we had another conversation with Helidon. So what's interesting here is that Helidon and Corkus are or next generation runtimes, but with almost opposite philosophy. So it's really nice to watch them evolving. Okay, so regarding this podcast, so what I did is I just screenshot this diagram. This is just Spotify, and we have a Spotify. I think there are roughly 600 to 800 followers, which basically probably means subscribers. But what's interesting here, the growth stopped in February. So I think it was the pandemic. It slowed down and then pick up. So now I don't know why. It's like in after the summer, it was just became more and more popular. So there is something happened here, which is of course amazing. So I don't have such diagrams for Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, and this podcast also Airhacks FM is also available on how it's called Amazon Music and Google as well. So I only have this statistic for Spotify. Okay, so this was Airhacks FM, and let's start with before we start with, so we can close the podcast, and also an announcement. So what I did, I announced unofficially the building event-driven application with streams, logs, and messages in March 23rd. And what I'm going to do in this workshop is to explain when reactive makes sense, because I got also lots of questions about my opinion about reactive programming. And it makes particular sense with event streaming. So with focus one day, building an event streaming application, probably with Kafka, with a little bit JMS, WebSockets, Quarkus, maybe Helidon. Let's see, this is March next year, but it's going to be hands-on. And because the PET is going to change in Germany, so I will charge you for or I will send you an invoice for this course next year, because otherwise there's always, a little bit problematic with re-invoicing and stuff like that. So if you like to pay this year, so just subscribe via Meetup or just register via Meetup or via Eventbrite. Okay, now the first question is from Baikov. Wait a second, this was the trick from last time, from Christian Baikov from Austria, and he asked me, or he said, okay, why I hate DTOs so much. And I don't hate DTOs at all. So DTOs, JavaDoc, OpenAPI, code coverage are in the same category for me. It's like esoterics not done right. So what it means, So sometimes DTO is just used because cargo cult, and it means there is no reason for DTOs, and identical objects are copied back and forth, and this of course causes a lot of waste. And if you DTOs done right, is a complete different story. So what it means is there is, as Christian said here, there is a projection. So it means we have a table or JPA entity, and the DTO is completely different. So there is no just, the DTOs can have more or less attribute than the entity. Then no questions about that. And what Christian did, he created a framework, or his company created a framework called Blaze. So the organization is BlazeBit, and this is the Blaze DS, Blaze Persistence. And it looks like comprises several parts. One part is a criteria API, and the other part is creating slices. So what can happen is that we have an entity, and a subset of the entity is just returned back. And this is the of course there are a view dependencies which you have to use, and there are supported runtime. So Eclipse Link and Hibernate both are supported, and there are the views. Where are the entity view usage? And the idea is you have like a view, and this is the entity cat, and this is the view. What the framework does, it just creates automatically from the entity the view, a subset, which is nice if you need it. So if someone asks me in a project whether we should use that, so I will ask the developers how many such cases they have in the project. We have like 100 entities, and we will have and there's also a subset, because what you can always do, you can return the entity back. Of course, I hear we are exposing the internal structure of the component. Yes, we are exposing, but if everything is tested, I mean, why you should hide the fact that, the table is the structure of the table? I mean, if in, let's say, microservice world, the table could become just another data sink. And we can model the table as we need the table, right? There is no reason to have a table which is not needed outside the microservice. So if we create the table right, so the chances are high, the entity will look like a table, and entity is exactly what you need in the application. In this particular case, I would never use DTO. So, but let's say we are not in the control of the database, and the DTOs have to look in particular way, then such a framework would make sense. Before we do this, I forgot something. So I would like to search for, hopefully, yeah. This is an older blog post, creating DTOs without mapping with JPA in Java E. Now it will be Jakarta, of course. And what JPA supports out of the box is you can actually select from an entity with the name pink like a subset, and the only thing is that the constructor has to match the result set. So what it means is I'm only selecting a subset, the message from the pink entity. And where is this is the pink slice? So we have the flight name, and there's the timestamp, which is internally generated, and the pink resource has sorry, where's the entity? Yeah, here's my pink entity. It comprises ID, message, and age, and this is and the slice only has the flight name. So for unknown reasons, the flight name. But so what happens here is I get actually back a pink slice. So this is built in. I would ask the developers why this is not good enough for exceptional cases. They say, okay, this is too cumbersome, and they have to write lots of code. Then, okay, the next thing would be to look at Java records, because they're on the horizon. There's a second preview. Of course, it's too early, but in 3 months, it could be, I don't know when JDK, the next JDK is coming out, probably in March, the JDK 16. So then it is already usable without preview flag. And then it looks completely different. So let's see, I think Java record. I already created, so the Java records will look like this. and then you will get the getters and setters automatically generated, equals and hash code and stuff like that, and you can use them like this. So what already happens, Jakarta runtimes already are able to create from records JSON-Bs. So what we will need is a possibility. I never tried that, but what probably works is, actually it should work, we could actually tell JPA return records instead of DTO. So then I will only have to create that. So this would be my next suggestion. So, but they say, okay, still we really need this framework. So then what I will do is I will take a look at the contributors. This is my general approach, and see that Christian. So Christian is really hyperactive. So he created a lot of stuff, 1,400 commits, and Moby is Moritz Becker. Seems like both are working in Austria. So what I think is, what I suspect, this BlazeBit is like a consulting business where they working for a larger client and they needed, some efficient way to create DTOs. My suspicion. So the question is, of course, and the next are not that active. So there's 66 commits in Netherlands. Okay, looks nice. And this is from Italy. So what it means is, what happens when after this show, so both guys probably listening to Airhacks TV and they say, hey, Adam is right. We will just ditch the framework, right? So then, I mean, now you are depending, on these two persons. So this is a little bit always problematic. You have third-party library. So what you will ask yourself, what is the added value of the framework, and how risky it is to use it. So this is always the trade-off. And I would say, if you have a legacy database and you would like to have a nice DTOs, probably something like this will really pay off. And the suggestion to both of the guys is to BlazeBit. I would try to make it a standard, like microprofile API stuff or extension of JPA. So if this is a standard, it's a complete different story. So, and I think it's a good opportunity to do that. So they could try not to create a Corkus extension or a Halidon extension. Okay, I think we covered this. And by the way, we will talk about that with Christian in one of the upcoming podcasts. So it's not recorded yet. I have a little bit back pressure on my Airhacks FM queue. Lots of interviews, lots of conversations, and I have still like 15 shows to edit. So a lot, and I'm actually not, not a media company. So I'm just a Java developer. Okay, so we covered that. We covered the BlazeBit, and now let's take a look on the next one. And this is fun. So following story. I already explained the story at Eclipse booth at the J4K conference, but what happened? The JDD conference pinged me and asked me whether I would like to be a media sponsor of the conference. I say, hey, look, media sponsor, and I just remember the JDD, and I say, okay, media sponsor, what's going on? I'm just a developer. If you like, I can speak at your conference, but the media sponsor says, okay, speak even better, then submit a session. And I submitted, but then I remembered I actually already attended the conference as a speaker in the year 2012. And what I did is I found a YouTube video from me from the conference, and the title was Java E, the future is now, but is not evenly distributed yet. And as you can see, that's me. And what also nice, I had almost the same notebook, but with Lightning, and Airhacks were already around. And what I did, I hacked some code on stage, JSF, as you can see. And the amazing story is I found the code, and I said, okay, this is 8 years old code. Back then, I actually said the future is now. So I believed in the code. So was I right or not? And as you can see, this is universe, and this is the code structure. So what I did, so I actually found the code, and the code is where? In Visual Studio Code. And so let's see what I did. First, the POM. Everything starts with the POM. This was PL. This was a Polish conference in Krakow. And what you see here, this was Java E6. So this was the recent spec back then. And what I wondered is why, you know, the Maven is so crazy. And what I remember then, I watched the beginning of the video, I used the NetBeans wizard for the creation. It was before I created the archetypes. But still, I mean, there were 77 lines of code. So what I would do right now is I would just to clean it up. And how to clean up? You can remove the Maven compiler. I could remove the war plugin. And the Maven dependency plugin is also not needed. And what remains is basically the Jakarta archetype. And I think I even did it, but if we just start a Jakarta EE project and say 2020 and go to yeah, and take a look at the POM, you will see that it's simpler. Let's take that. So how the new POM would look like. So first the properties. So I would just, you know, steal the properties here and yeah, replace them. So, and with the properties, properties and properties. So what I have here, I have Maven 11, a fail on missing web XML, Maven 11, Java 11, fail on missing web XML is false. And yeah, this name is not needed because we have the artifact ID. I can now remove the compiler plugin. I can actually remove the war plugin. And I can remove the dependency plugin with that. Actually, I can remove all the plugins. And then the only thing which remains is that. So actually, it would look like this. And everything else is actually not needed. So now we have the project. So always, okay. Now, now we have it. And what I tend to do is like I like to put it here on the bottom. Okay, so that's all. So we have the old Java dependency, and take a look. Maven clean install, and with a little bit of luck, we should be able to run it. Okay, universe. And what happens is in the target, I have U2020 war, and this should be universe. This was wrong. So now I have, you know, the standard ThinWAR project. Now take a look at the code. So we have a comment servlet here, and back then there was before JAX-RS and asynchronous requests. This was the possibility to start asynchronous requests, and what I did is I fired an event, the async context, and it was received by the processor somewhere. There was, I think, the job listener. So, or yeah, this is on window request, so it received the async context, and then I wrote, you know, hello from EJB, and so this was the comment servlet, the configurator. So what this did is I had environment-dependent injection of strings, which could be replaced right now with microprofile config. So 8 years later, I could delete exactly this class and the project. This should also work right now, but I could make it leaner. And the DB configurator extends from the configurator, and I say, okay, this specializes this class, and now I can configure from database. Then the environment, just production and test, so I can specify now which one I would like to do. Environment provider, so I said, okay, I'm in the test mode or dev mode. And good morning, Krakow, this is the city where the conference took place. So stateless, if it would run on Quarkus, I could replace with, or Helidon, with request scoped and transactional, or otherwise we will just keep it. And this is the inject complex configuration. In the year 2020, we would say add inject config property. And index is JSF, would still run not on Corkus or Helidon, or Corkus would run actually with extension, not on Helidon. but on Whitefly and OpenLiberty, Payara, still not a problem. And we saw the job listener and the thread starter. This was the attempt with EJBs to have asynchronous processing, so you can just pass a runnable and execute that. So with that, actually, I could replace it right now with, for instance, bulkheads from microprofile, and yeah, or replace. So I would, instead of asynchronous, I would put bulkheads, and there is no need to use the runnable here. Okay, so what it means is that actually this code after 8 years would be not that different. And this is one of the reasons why Jakarta or now microprofile is still so popular, because you will never force to migrate somewhere. And if and the first migration on the horizon after all these years is Jakarta 9, which is not true migration, is more like, you know, search and replace packages, not like, you know, the APIs changed, just the package naming changed. And I haven't tried that, but we could actually try reinstall Whitefly. Let's see. So this is just this is the recent Whitefly, and I'm actually in the wrong folder. It was Universe. I should be able to start Whitefly. This should work flawlessly. Okay. And then I would run my ward. And I hope Java 11 and it deployed to Whitefly. So looks good. As you can see, all the EJBs are recognized with my simplified war. POM. Actually, the old POM would also work. The only problem would be that the ward wouldn't recognize the structure. So okay, so we have it. So where is my browser? So let's see. And this was localhost 8080. This should be Whitefly, which is true. Universe. And this is EJB hello from database. This is response with JSF with the old machinery's configuration still works 8 years later. So I think I was kind of right back then. And what surprised me, how the code, we could write similar code right now without any suspicion. So I mean, it would be just, this is modern code, right? We can argue, okay, JSF, should we use JSF or not? As for specific cases, JSF is still great. But yeah, and I hope now, in 8 years or in 10 years, we can meet again here, and I can show you that actually the microprofile code from here still runs and feels right 10 years later. Okay, I hope this was fun, and let's proceed with the next question. It's not a really question. This is a nice Jafar. The nice Jafar writes a book about Java E, and he asked me what they can use my stuff. From said yes, and what he did is he picked my Java 8 Essentials archetype, and then complained that it doesn't work. And I thought this is strange because I use it all the time. And what I recognized is the following, and this is explanation from here. So this is the Docklands project, and the structure of the so what is Docklands? Is a collection of usable Docker files I used in my open source projects and sometimes commercial project, and I backported them because I needed them for multiple clients. And this is not like I'm upgrading everything over and over again. Sometimes, you know, like Glassfish v5, Glassfish 5 Pink is 3 years old. But what I did right now, I searched for Payara, for instance. So there's the Payara, which is half years old. And there's always the same structure. So this image inherits from Java 11 image. And all the Docker files come with deployment directory. And what you have to do is you can say in traditional Java Jakarta servers is to say, okay, deployment dir points to the auto deploy folder. And then you inherit from that, and it works. The same is true for Glassfish. And what I did in the archetype, this is the actual question. So if you switch to the question, and the archetype here Actually, I use the the archetype. I am curious actually what the archetype does. And by the way, the exception here is intentional because I threw exception. You see, Java runtime exception just for fun. Received done because this exception demonstrated what happens whether rollbacks actually worked with CDI transactional events. Okay, I would like to kill the whitefly and the universe 2020. U2020 should actually come with Docker container. Let's see, Docker container, Docker file. And this is the problem. So what I do is I ship the Docker file with Glassfish, and this is an older Glassfish. And if someone tries to use the Jakarta 8 features, you are in trouble because the Glassfish is open source, no more maintained, or no more highly maintained version of application not highly maintained version of Payara. That's what I wanted to say. And instead of Glassfish, you should replace it with Whitefly, OpenLiberty, or Payara, for instance, and then it will work. So the trouble is, don't use the Docker file from here, or what you should do, you should modify the replace Glassfish with Payara or Whitefly. Okay, I think now it's crystal clear. And then next topic. So this was the conversation back and forth. And I saw that you are using Payara Micro. I never use Payara Micro in production, so I never tested actually, or never tested. I know that I just have a Docker file with Payara Micro because someone asked me about that. So we did a proof of concept, but I personally never did with Payara Micro something in production. Okay, this is solved. Then Dempile, which is Omar Alvarez from Algeria, asked me, I would like to centralize the authentication of all our enterprise applications in one place using Keycloak. Keycloak is nice, so good choice. And they have JSF and Jakarta applications. So Dempile, Omar asked, what interests me, what are you actually building? It would be nice to know, what you are building. And view apps that uses from the libraries. So how can I use Keycloak with Soteria in order to secure the apps that have JSF pages, since Keycloak is oriented to secure endpoint resources? And if you can hack something. No, I cannot hack something. The problem is the deadlines are hunting me. I have to complete a lots of work this week, actually, almost mission impossible. Absolutely no time, so for leisure hacking right now. But what I did is, what you should do, you should take a look at for instance, JSR 375 examples from Rudy de Buscher, who works for Payara. And if you search, for instance, for LDAP JSF form, this is a nice example, and it works with Payara, so you can just test that. And they come with, for instance, logging backing bean. And what the logging backing bean does is it uses the username password credential, uses security context, and authenticates against something, right? So now, if you have Keycloak, you need probably something different, because what will happen is the question now, what you would like to achieve. Wait a second. Centralize the authentication of all our enterprise applications. So what this could mean is that every JSF application will redirect to Keycloak, or what you can do, you can have one central proxy, not JSF, like a proxy service, which will redirect to Keycloak, come back with the JSON Web Token, and then communicate with your backend services. So in the second case, you don't need anything. You only need microprofile JSON Web Token, because the JSF will understand you. And then, of course, the JSON Web Token has to be passed back and forth between JSF and the backend. And you have two choices: either authorization header, which would be hard with JSF because it's not everything, not always. You will have to tell JSF, send me back the authorization header, but cookies are usually supported as well. So the cookie would be set in a browser and then passed back and forth between JSF and the browser, and this could work or should work. So I will investigate that. Or what you could do, you can use, for instance, the keycloak filters, so keycloak ships with filters, and the filters would redirect you to keycloak, come back with the JSON Web Token. This is also possible. So, or there is keycloak gatekeeper, I hope, a library written in Go, and this is really gatekeeper, exactly. So what you could do, you could use the, I actually used that already, keycloak gatekeeper, and this is the proxy which will intercept the call, go to keycloak, come back with the JSON Web Token, and this could be the most transparent and easy to use solution for you. Okay, so we covered that, and then there is also an article from Open Liberty, and what they use is HTTP authentication mechanism with actually JSF. So they investigate, then there's the login bean with faces context. So take a look on that. It's also useful. There are many choices to do such a thing. And the question is, if you have the power, you could actually create a proxy, and the proxy will just inject the tokens. This would be the easiest part to do. Or you can enhance every JSF application with a kind of filter, and keycloak ships with such servlet filters where they will wrap the faces servlet. Or you could try, to have like a hybrid where the token is stored in a cookie, for instance, and pass back and forth between the browser and the JSF. So you don't what should work then? You should be able in the backing beans to inject the JSON Web Token, or you get the principal. No, JSON Web Token, it depends which. So if you just would use JSR 375, then you get injected principal, and roles allowed would work. If you're using microprofile JSON Web Token, it will extract information from JSON Web Token directly. I hope it's a little bit clearer, and you have the resources with working examples. And this is the example from LDAP JSFX, and similar examples is if you search for JSR 37 Soteria examples, you will also find examples there. Okay, this is done, empty. This is also the DTO slicing records, our 8 years old legacy application, and this was the Go library. And that's me hacking 8 years ago some stuff on stage and claiming it's the future. So no, this is nice on YouTube, so we can document everything, right? So okay, now this, and now a really nice question from Josef Mader-Kreiner, and I know Josef from some projects, and he had a really nice and very good question actually, because and what he states is microservices built with Eclipse, microprofile Jakarta are really efficient. Yeah, they are really small, and state-of-the-art implementation like Quarkus, Open Liberty, or Helidon, don't forget that, Pyara as well, and Whitefly. So this is, the truth is you can save with Corkus and Helidon 50% of memory, but now we come to the interesting part. He says, okay, actually there are still use cases where you need a lot of resources. And that's the point. So this is not like if you will load into your cache, in JVM cache, let's say some master data, and it will be like on Pyara, it will, take 2 gigs on a Corkus 100 megs. It's not how it works. So these runtimes, they start fast and they have a low memory footprint if the application is empty. But if you load a hash map with data, regardless whether it runs on stock JVM or Quarkus or Pyara, it will always take the same amount of memory. There is no magic. And this is what I also wanted to say is, in this particular case, so the question is, what do you think are good technical limitations for microservices written Jakarta and microprofile? Is a microservice which needs about 10 gigs of RAM and 4 cores still micro? Do you restrict resources in your projects? So let's say there is a business need for that. So what it could be, you need some machine learning or GraalVM translation service, or what else? 4 cores is not a lot, right? So I think this is like, a smartphone. And 10 gigs of RAM is for JVM is not a lot if you do a lot of stuff. So let's say if there's a caching service, then or some calculations where you need fast data to access to data locality, then it will work. So now the question is, how much money do you have to spend for 10 gigabyte RAM and 4 cores? And if you tell your developers you are not allowed to use 10 gigabyte of RAM, you're only allowed to use 1 gig of RAM and you get 1 core, then probably you will have to start this microservice 10 times and there will be major refactoring required, and probably the entire application is not going to be as stable as a monolith. That's the point. So in this particular case, I would not restrict anything if it makes sense. It doesn't make any sense if a business, if you can provide simple solution which consumes a lot of memory in CPU, but you can build it fast. It is easy to maintain and easy to understand. To split it to microservice just because someone said, microservices have to be small. So, what do you think are good technical limitations for microservice written in Jakarta and microprofile? I think so. Technical limitations are good, or like resource limitations. What I would propose is like, what we could do, for instance, is to say a default microservice. We will set, the CPU limits on Kubernetes, memory limits 128 megs. I think for Helidon or Quarkus, more than enough for application without any caching demands. And CPU, I would say 2 cores or 1 core. Just go with 1 core. But then, if the application hits the limits, there should be a very easy opportunity to give more resources. Because in my eyes, it's still a way easier to scale with CPUs than what's fashionable these days. A microservice gets a tenth of a core, and you start 100 of them. For me, it would be a way more reasonable to have 1 microservice with 10 cores, and then 10 microservices with 1 core. Okay, so I would say it boils down to simplicity and maintainability. I would say even in microservice and cloud native world, you will spend a lot more money for maintainability than for hardware costs. And you shouldn't forget that regardless what you are paying in your clouds and cloud providers and or in-house, hardware is still getting cheaper and cheaper. And what I already see on the horizon is there are hardware like Raspberry Pis, where you can actually run clouds on it. So not toys, so real servers built on Raspberry Pis, and ARM-based servers are on the horizon. So there should be actually a major computation. The cloud should be cheaper over time. And what I also see, if the cloud won't become cheaper. So what I would expect, that the private clouds become a thing, or on-premise solution, because it's or not on-premise. You could rent servers on colocation. You could rent servers and run whatever you like on servers. Like in Germany, we have service called Hetzner, and there is forgot in Switzerland one service, and these servers are really cheap, and you can install these machines, whatever you like. Okay, this was the 80th edition of EXTV, and by the way, there's one remaining question, and this is in the video what I did. I recorded 2 videos, Corkus with NetBeans and Helidon with NetBeans, just because people ask me why I'm using the entire time Visual Studio Code. So okay, I'm still use NetBeans, and what I did is I installed the newest NetBeans. And if you do this, NetBeans will find older NetBeans. They will ask you, whether they are old, whether it should import the old configurations. And I had lots of NetBeans installed, and it even found the old NetBeans 8. And someone mentioned, okay, this was the first comment, or not the first, yeah, one of the first. NetBeans was last used 98 days ago. This is not true. NetBeans was installed 98 days ago. So now, someone was impressed by my notebook. Why so fast? And it is not fast at all. It's a almost 2 years old machine. And now this is interesting, and I would like to answer this question. So Java Center. By the way, nice name, developer. I would also, my last name, if this were Java Center, would be nice. So, hello, Amma, thanks for good videos. So, thank you. As a Spring developer, I can see Oracle is killing Java's platform. I don't see this. Not at all. So, with wrong policy, this is why I didn't want it. I will just, add the comment or add this link to this AirHackCV as a comment to the video. Wrong policies and make JDK non-full free. This is actually not true. This is OpenJDK, and I would say you can buy from Oracle this JDK, but this is optional. You can buy support from Azul systems, for instance, Zulu. You can get a supported JDK from Amazon Corretto for free. It's, I think, only JDK 1.8 right now. Because of lambdas, I don't know whether JDK 11 is supported, but you can get for free. And you can buy support from Red Hat and other companies. So I would say it is better than before because you have the choice. You can, and it is perfectly fine just to use the OpenJDK. And and Microsoft, on the other hand, had made everything open source. I would say it is almost the same story. So Oracle had the commercial JDK, and they open sourced that at some times already. And there was always OpenJDK. And I would say, since Oracle is took over, they contributed all the commercial pieces to OpenJDK. So I would say, I really like Sun, but in this particular case, Oracle behaves better than Sun because even the Java Visual VM is now open source. And and free for developers, and also release .NET Core cross-platform. Well, yeah, but no difference to Oracle, right? Strong and easy even for enterprise developers. But I think, this is what I don't know, whether you can buy, if you buy, you can probably buy support for .NET from Microsoft, and then there will be identical situation. First, tell us what will happen for Java community in the next 10 years. Hard to tell. So I only hope that my Java E code will still work in 10 years. But yeah, and I think Java will going to do well. And what not to forget, I think Oracle almost saves Java, right? Because with GraalVM there is a fresh wind, right, blowing in the JVM ecosystem, because we can do incredible things with GraalVM, and this is Oracle's steward of GraalVM. And I would say what I don't like is someone who bashes Oracle, because what Oracle is just a huge company. And what my observation is the following, like, because, a huge company is not like the, the top chief of a company exactly know what's going on in the departments. And then, people take advantage of the idea and do great things sometimes, right? So like they open source things, they push, projects forward because they would like to move Java forward. And Oracle, I would say, it will be interesting actually to have the statistics. I would say, at the JDK team and Java related stuff, there was still, I would say, 20 to 30% of Sun, prior Sun employees there. And they just, still like Java. So this is what happens. So it's not like, Oracle tries to kill Java. I don't see the point. And and now the question is, why should not I prefer C#.NET Core on Java with paid JDK? And this is what I don't get. The comparison should be, why should not prefer C# on OpenJDK? You cannot just compare open source .NET Core with commercial Oracle. And there's not only commercial Oracle. What I forgot to mention, OpenJ9 from IBM, great JDK. Just take that. And you can have free or so I would say, we are better than .NET Core, right? Because there is one .NET Core and there are lots of OpenJDKs. So yeah. But having said that, .NET Core, I would say, before I will learn another JVM language, I will switch completely to something different. And I wouldn't do .NET Core now because for me, I don't see any projects which are using .NET Core. What I probably would learn is, or better understand is, Rust go or reactivate my C and C++ skills, this is what I will do. But yeah, so actually, and why? I mean, I don't see why I should leave Java now. But if I had to, and .NET Core, I would say nothing against Microsoft. I really like Microsoft. And Microsoft does right now great things. As long as they earn money from the clouds, I think Java is going to be, and there are lots of Java projects. Microsoft will still love Java for the upcoming years. So yeah. Okay, and and this is also nice. What is Quarkus and why should we care, right? Yeah, this is you can say, yeah. Actually, I could also answer this. Why? What is C# and why should we care, right? So, but yeah, it's always a question. But let's take it seriously. So what I did is I just replied. You can take a look at the why is everybody talking about Quarkus video session. But it's actually a good point. Why should we care about Quarkus? Because the Quarkus is a marketing gig, I would say. There is nowhere there is Java-E or J2E. So people are thinking, no, Quarkus is the completely new thing, runtime, which is. The runtime is completely new. But why should we care about Quarkus? Is because it supports, the 8-year-old APIs I showed you right now, 80 to 90% of them, and Helidon as well. So why should we care about Helidon and Quarkus? Is because I still hear in projects right now, we have to save memory. We have to save, CPUs. And then I say, okay, then take Quarkus. And by the way, let's see, Adam Bean also forgot something. DTO generic. We should find a very old blog post. Yes, 13 years old. And what I did back then is, no, this is generic DTO and Adam Bean generic DAO. Right. And this should be also old. Yeah, 11 years old. And if you take a look at this DAO here, which I created and wrote blog posts about that, this DAO doesn't make any sense, right? There's a create, so it just wraps the entity manager. The question is why I did this. And the answer is because back then, every project wanted to have DAO. And Atkinson law of triviality, right? So they just wanted to have DAO and discuss the architecture. So what I did is, okay, at the very beginning, if I saw, there is no way to convince the architects that DAOs are optional. So what I did is I introduced such a DAO at the beginning of the project, and then discussion stopped, and afterwards I deleted the DAO. So the same is true for Quarkus and Helidon. So if you see, okay, they say Java is bloated and Jakarta is bloated, and it's not cloud native, not cloud ready. So okay, then we have the smallest possible runtimes. This is the smallest frameworks you can get. This is Helidon and Quarkus, and or Piranha Cloud on the horizon. So then we pick them, and the discussion is over. So it will save, several days in meetings, and you can pick the frameworks, save memory, and then you will have exactly the same programming model as the other Jakarta e-service. So it's a marketing gig. So I hope. So let's see. And we forgot the Twitter. Where is my Twitter? Here. Oh, thank you, Omar. And I hope, Omar, it was helpful. And if you like, tell us what you are actually building. So on that note, thank you for watching. See you at upcoming conferences. If you like, you can register or subscribe to the meetups. Or you don't have to, actually, because, let's see, Adam Bean gists. This code here, this gist, will tell you when is the next eHexTV. So if you just copy and execute from the command line, it will you will see. So that this is everything. You just copy it and run it. Java, you don't even have to compile it, and you will see when the next eHexTV is. This is also subscribe to Meetup eHex, and see you at eHex FM is here you, but eHex.live. some up. And by the way, there are already sufficient registrations, so they will definitely take part. So if you like microprepare with Quarkus and micro frontend, so we build the first day the backend and the second day in frontends without any frameworks. And but we will do no navigation, third-party components, whatever makes a modern application. So there are already enough registrations if you like, register. Thank you. Bye.